Hi, we're with our classic cameras expert John Wade, and today we're talking about panoramic cameras, a bit of a tour of some of the classics. So John, what are we going to start talking about?
Well, I'm going to start by showing you some of the results of the camera, which I haven't got, but I'm willing to bet a good many people who are watching this video at some time in their lives have had their picture taken with one of these cameras. And what I'm talking about is this.
Okay.
And these are pictures which were typically taken to schools, in school photography. I've got one of my own. I've got my mother's that was taken in 1926, my own in 1957, and I've got my daughter's that was taken in 1990. So the camera that took that was a camera called the Kodak Cirkut, and they made those from about 1904 onwards, something like that. And the way they worked, they were just rather like a large plate camera, and they fitted onto a tripod and were geared to it. And all the people in having their picture taken, it could be up to 1,000 people, were arranged in a semicircle, and the camera was placed at exactly the right position, wound up because it was clockwork, and when the exposure was made, the camera very slowly rotated round like that, and at the back of the lens there was a small slit, and the image was projected through that slit onto the film, which at the same time as that camera was moving that way, was moving across the plane, all by clockwork, and it built up one of these 5 pictures.
So why were the subjects arranged in a semicircle?
Well, this is one of the things about panoramic cameras. If you think of a super wide picture like the one I've just shown, the people at the far edges are going to be farther away from the camera than the people in the middle. Therefore, when the picture is taken, it's like the people in the middle are closer to the camera. And an average panoramic camera, taken by all sorts of different modes, would bulge in the middle. So what the photographer did is they arranged them in a semicircle, which counteracted that bulge. So when the pictures came out, as this one that we've just looked at, the people appear to be arranged in a straight line, but they're actually
Curved in a semicircle. Okay, that's clever.
in a semicircle.
Okay.
So those cameras were first made about 1904, and to my knowledge, they were still being used, the same old cameras, up to 1990.
When did they stop making them?
I don't know. I think they stopped making them probably in the 30s or 40s, but people who got them kept them going. People in America were making the films for them. And I can state 1990 with certainty because my daughter had her picture taken at her school in 1990. So I got my mother's, which was taken in 1926, mine was taken in 57, and my daughter's was taken in 1990.
Obviously, school photos are still being taken now, aren't they? But not necessarily on 30.
These days, of course, you can do it digitally, like stitching the pictures together, and I'm sure they do. So that was one of probably the first commercially successful cameras, but mostly used by professionals. Now, when an amateur wanted to take panoramic pictures, they were much more likely to go for one of these. This is what's known as a swing lens camera. And this is the Kodak Panoram, which was made around about 1904, 1904, something like that. And if you look here, you'll see a curved engraving, and that's where the film is. The film goes around a curved plane around there. And when you take the picture, the lens is not pointing forward, it's pointing sideways. And when you take the picture, the lens swings from one side to the other. At the back of the lens is a tube with a small slit in it, and it kind of sprays the picture onto the curved plane. Now, I'll show you that working on a larger version of that because that particular one doesn't work. But that's the number 1. This is the number 4. And so if we open up like that, and we prime it by turning that around like that, if we're on a lucky day and we press the shutter button, and that would have taken the picture and sprayed, as it were, the picture onto the back there. And they remained popular right through to about 1928. They were made mostly by Kodak, like that one, although this is an American version called the Al Vista, but it's exactly the same idea. There's the lens around there. You press the shutter button and the lens goes through it, like that. Now, those 3 cameras are obviously early panoramic cameras. If you wanted to use one, you could at a push. In that, the number 1 took a weird size of film. I think it might have been called 105, but don't quote me on that. But in 1901, 120 film appeared for the first time, and it became very, very popular. And a lot of people right back then had these converted to take 120 film.
Okay.
So if you buy one, if you find one of these today on eBay or whatever, there's a good chance it takes 120 film and a good chance you can use it. So the pictures taken with a Panoram haven't survived. It's very rare to find them. But occasionally you might find one, and even less occasionally you might find an album that's full of the pictures. And I found this at auction some years ago. And this is a picture just taken with a Panoram camera. I think they're about 7 inches wide. So that is a very unusual find.
It's quite a rare book.
It's rare, yeah. And especially, I don't particularly collect images, but I couldn't resist those.
But these are Kodak.
Yeah, that's Kodak. So the #1 Panoram, it's called. Panoramic photography, probably for the average amateur, became a lot more easy with 35mm. And a Russian company called Krasnogorsk made this in 1958. But it's still the same theory. It's a swing lens camera, which we prime like that. And we release the shutter.
Okay.
And the film, in fact, if I open it up, the film goes around.
Okay, you can see that.
That film plane and around there.
All right.
It's got...
I bet loading this is quite fiddly, isn't it?
Yes, yes. It took its own cassette. So another tip, if anyone bought one of these for use, make sure it's got its cassettes, because it does not take standard cassettes.
Right, okay.
So what you have to do is go into your changing bag, or darkroom if you've got one, and reload the film into its own cassettes, which I've done, and I've used it. It's supposed to take 12 pictures, 105mm by 24. I've never gotten much before 9, before the film tour. But it's got a rather interesting way of setting shutter speed. It's got a fixed focus, fixed aperture lens. But to set the shutter speeds, we have 2 little levers here.
Okay.
And it explains on this plate what they do. Now, when both levers are pointing down like that, it's a 400th of a second. When that lever is pointing down, or that lever is pointing right, it's a 200th of a second. And when that lever is pointing left, and that lever is pointing down, it's 100th of a second. But because it's about an f5 lens, 100th and 200th overexpose this completely.
Yeah.
So the times I've only ever used it, I've used it at the 400th second.
All right.
And it's worked very well. Now, that same theory was continued by the same company in the 60s. This is about 62, 63, with a camera called the Horizont. And it's the same theory. You wind the film and you expose it. If you buy one of these, make sure it comes with its viewfinder.
Okay.
Because that's a special viewfinder and you won't be able to get a panoramic preview. The other thing you need as well is the little hand grip on the bottom.
And that screws onto the tripod.
Just screws into the tripod socket. Because if you use one of these like this, as you normally would with a camera, each side of the picture you're going to have a pair of knuckles. So what you do is you hold it like that and you expose it like that.
Right.
So you wind it like that. And
this again is a Russian camera. Yeah?
Russian, made by Krasnogorsk, the same people who made that. It has got, if I can open up the back, it explains in the back how to load the film. And as you can see, it's a little complicated.
It's very complicated, isn't it?
It goes over and under and under and over.
So you've got it goes behind this reel here, wrap around here, and then behind the cogs.
Yep.
And then back out and around.
And if you don't do that, it jams. So,
yeah.
But
I have used one of these once, and obviously I did it wrong, and didn't get any pictures out of it.
But helpfully, they gave this little diagram for you.
Yeah.
And even more helpfully, they didn't put it in Russian, so...
Yeah. Wow, yeah.
So that one for me is a collector's item, whereas the one that came next, I have used. It's not nearly as attractive to look at.
It's plastic as well, isn't it?
It's plastic, and but it's, again...
Is it the same company?
It's Krasnogorsk, it's the same company, and you can still buy these. I don't know if they're still making them, but you can certainly find them on the Lomo website. And the way film photography has been going these days, they're getting a bit expensive. But it's the same theory. And if you notice when we open that up, it's got a curved film back as well.
Yeah.
So there you are. And that theory went on for a while. They even introduced it in the 60s. It seemed like 16mm might have taken over from 35mm. And there were 16mm cameras made for everything, from single lens reflexes down to just sub-miniatures. And this company, Viscawide, even made a swing lens camera.
It's a 16mm.
For 16mm. And again, you tensioned it. That way it looks like it's already been tensioned. Now, does it want to go? I don't think it wants to go, so I'm not going to force it. And you released it there. It's the same theory.
Okay. It's an American camera.
No, it's Japanese.
Oh, Japanese.
That's Japanese. I can't imagine too many people would have used it, but 16mm looked like it was going to be the big thing in the city, and then it died away again. So many people have tried to oust 35mm, APS, for instance, and haven't got anywhere with it. Now, I also want to show you a one-off. The camera I'm going to show you, it is a one-off. You won't find another one, so don't go and try and buy one. And I can tell you that because I know the son of the man who made it. And this is called a CieLisT. It's called a CieLisT because the man who made it, his name was C. Leslie Thompson. And he was also a big fan of the stereo realist, which was a stereo camera. And he built this. And what he did, he started off with a Ray stereographic that looks like this. This is a perfectly normal stereo camera that took 2 images on film. If we open up the inside and take the back off, again, with the stereo camera, you've got the 2 images exposed simultaneously. But you've also got big space in between them. And what Leslie Thompson did was he removed that space. And then having done that, he grafted this bit on the front. He put an angle-on lens on it. Now, this particular angle-on lens, which is a 90mm, was used as a wide-angle lens on 5x4 cameras. So it covers that format.
Right.
And so what you have is a complete, I nearly said stereo, panoramic picture from there to there. He made a viewfinder by taking a Zeiss viewfinder made for wide-angle lenses and masking it down, top and bottom. The shutter release on the angle-on lens is there, but what he did was he made a little extension there so that you can release it there. And I've got to tell you, it's really lovely. Instruction on the top how to use it. Load on S, so you turn this to S. 2.5 turns to I, one wind, 2 turns plus 1. You can work it out. Eventually, it means that this counter has to go round twice. So if you're number 2, you wind it so it goes round twice and stops at 3.
Okay.
Wind it turns twice and stops at 4. And it does work. I've taken pictures with it, and the great thing is it's completely flat. There's no swing lens, so the traditional panoramic picture, which tends to bulge in the middle, for reasons we mentioned, doesn't happen. It's completely flat, and I've got some great pictures of a viaduct just down the road to where I live, taken both ways. One, the whole thing bulges towards you, and with this, it's perfectly flat. And this man was a bit of a genius. I was contacted by his son, who said, I know you're interested in Ray, because I've seen it on your website. Would you like a Ray panoramic camera? And I said, they never made one. He said, no, but my dad did. And after a little bit of negotiation, it came my way. Of course, panoramic photography sort of continued into like the 70s and 80s in compact cameras, which weren't really panoramic at all. They just masked the image top and bottom, right through to the throwaway cameras, which is the same theory. They call it panoramic, but it's a 35mm camera.
Just masked
top and bottom. And to finish on a lighter note, these are still available. You can buy these, I think, on the Lomo website. It's called a spinner. And we're right back to the Cirkut again. It works exactly the same way as the Cirkut did. And you pull that, and it takes a picture. Who knows where it's going to start? Who knows where it's going to stop? I do have a friend who's used one of these, and they're pretty hopeless. But it's an interesting...
It's a bit novelty.
It's an interesting collector's item. But it takes us right back to the start, the same theory.
Same theory as the
Same
circuit.
theory as the circuit. And there are
Fascinating.
a quick trip through the world of panoramic cameras.
Well, thank you for that, John. That's really interesting. If you ever used panoramic cameras before, if you have an interest in panoramic photography, have you got any of these cameras or used one or seen them, do let us know in the comments what you think, and don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.